And now we'd like to call on Leoluca Orlando, who's the mayor of Palermo.
Sindaco di Palermo, per favore.
Buon pomeriggio, grazie alla
Good afternoon. Thank you to the Pontifical Council of Social Sciences and the Pontifical Council of Academy of Science for having called us to discuss a possible future. Laudato Si is not the photograph of something which exists, but the indication of a path. And I would like to express admiration and gratitude, and also filial respect for Pope Francis. Laudato Si, I would say, if each human being could decide where to live freely, where to survive, and where to die. I would like to say Laudato Si, if every human being could choose as his home where he lives and where he has never been born. Laudato Si, I would add, beings could choose identities without necessarily being conditioned by place of birth or the blood of their parents. Laudato Si is the message which comes from Palermo, a city which is proud to have a black saint as a patron saint who came as a slave from across the Mediterranean, Saint Benedict the Moor. And black saint as our patron, who gives his name to the most important avenida in Buenos Aires, Avenida San Benito de Palermo. And I think that speaking of those who, with a nasty word we call migrants, is a work of corporal mercy, works of corporal mercy, which summarizes all the others, because assisting the hungry, the needy, the ill, those in prison, and the dead are acts of mercy. And I think that this is one of the reasons why this is such an important meeting. But I would like to say something about Palermo. Palermo is not a European city. Palermo is a Middle Eastern city in Europe. And since in favor of jus soli, we are proud of being Europeans. Palermo is like Beirut, like Istanbul. I'm sorry for Frankfurt or Hamburg, since German is my second language, but Sicilian is my first language. And I believe that Palermo is a Middle Eastern city in Europe, and this is the great strength of this city. Palermo is not a picture and a painting, it's a mosaic made of pieces of different color and shape, but it is a mosaic which is without a frame, becomes an incoherent of shards. And our frame has to be the respect of all human beings, to be different and to be equal. And for this we are proud for having the blessed Pino Pugliese, who was born in Palermo. He died not killed by the mafia. He died because he defended the rights of children, and the mafia killed him. And I think that is the sense of the message which comes from Palermo. Palermo recently was recognized and placed in the World Heritage List of UNESCO. Arab Norman Palermo. In other parts of the world, Arabs are on one side and Normans are on the other side, often at war. In Palermo, Arab Norman is a harmonious style. The Norman king, the day after he defeated the Arabs, built a splendid castle in the Arab style. I think that would be enough to recall that in the cat, the dog, and the mouse walk together. In other parts of the world this doesn't happen, and since I'm a mouse, I'm glad I live in Palermo, because I don't run the risk of being eaten by the cat. I think this is the message which comes from Palermo, where we've given honorary citizenship to all those who live in Palermo, and in the same way honorary citizenship to all people who had been given the death sentence, without asking whether there was any criminal responsibility behind the death sentence, because nobody, and no state certainly, can kill, because today a permit of stay has become a new death penalty. today a residence permit has become a new slavery, that death penalty which was envisaged by state laws and which still exists in the laws of countries which consider themselves to be civilized, and which this law makes them be uncivilized. I know that this is a contentious statement. The great Voltaire was an ignoble slave trafficker because the laws allowed him to trade in human beings. I believe that changing the laws is our task, and this is why from Palermo we have the Charter of Palermo issuing a few months ago. We approved the Charter of Palermo, which proposes that the permit of residence be abolished, not abolish the passport. That's important because I'd be afraid if Sicilians could go around the world without any supervisions. I'm not afraid of the Germans or the people from Bengal, but I'm afraid of Sicilians, and that's the reason why we suggest that the residence permit be abolished, but passports remain, because the residence permit is something which is an act of prohibitionism, which causes organized crime. If you come to the port of Palermo, yet another ship bringing in migrants is sailing in. The port of Palermo is an exemplary place for civilization, where there's enormous cooperation on the part of the healthcare services, social services, the municipality, cultural mediators. They're always present at the port of Palermo. We have always the cardinal, the bishop, and the prefect to send out a message that criminals aren't coming in, but people who have a right to mobility. The day will come in which we will move from migration as a form of suffering to mobility as a human inalienable right. And today we share the responsibility in a genocide. In a few years' time we will be called upon as people responsible for a genocide, in the same way that still 70 years later Germans of today are considered to have responsibility for Dachau and Auschwitz, because what is being done today in the name of the selfishness of the god of money is a genocide. And I want to tell you of some of the episodes in this genocide, because telling stories is much important than just bandying words. At the port of Palermo I've seen 2,300 children land, migrant children. I've never heard one of these children cry. The children of migrants don't cry. They've given up the right to exist. They've given up the right to ask and to have any claims. I went to a Caritas center. This is another anecdote to Claudia Rota, who is deputy president of the German Bundestag, who then invited me in the Foreign Affairs Committee to speak of the Charter of Palermo. I'm a person, I'm Ahmed, I am Charlie, ich bin ein Berliner. For the abolition of the residence permit, there were 18 sub-Saharans. There was a couple, a boy and a girl, and I asked the boy and the girl to tell me their story. The girl says, Mr. Mayor, she said in perfect English, we left our country because I was pregnant and I wanted to save my child. We spent 7 days, 7 nights crossing the desert. We finally reached Libya, where we spent 3 months undergoing all kinds of violence. Mr. Mayor, can I tell you the violence a pregnant woman underwent? And we finally found $4,000 to cross on a boat, and despite the but after we reached the port of Palermo, and at the port of Palermo we were taken in at night. After 48 hours my child was born. And the 3 months lived by this woman was 7 months of violence, 3 days at sea, and the child who was finally born. And I said, but what did you do in your country? And she said, I was an English teacher, Mr. Mayor. And speaking to his partner, I said, what did you do in your country? I was a software engineer, Mr. Mayor. At this point, I felt very ashamed, but I asked them a question, which I'm glad I asked. In the 5 days and 5 nights you cross the Mediterranean, from the boat, did anybody fall or did anybody die? And this woman looked at me with terror, and she cried out, terrified, I didn't see anything, I didn't see anything. And I saw the image of my pregnant child who killed someone to save her child. And putting people in this position, they seem to be the people who were in Auschwitz and Dachau.